Hey guys, Will Lewis here, talking to Tom Alderton from the With You With Me Software Development Academy Pathway Practice, talking today about software development, career opportunities and training through With You With Me. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, mate. How about you?
I'm doing pretty well. Yourself?
Yeah, keeping it real through COVID-19, mate. Making the most of it as best we can.
Slowly going insane.
Yeah. I'm a naturally an extrovert, so isolation isn't it's not my natural state. It's not where I do best at, but doing what I can, testing and adjusting.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, mate. Look, I wanted to pick your brains about a few things, especially in the software dev side of things. It's our newest pathway with you, with me. There's definitely some opportunities there, but I wanted to sort of talk to you, get more information so that the users that might be watching this get more information about, hey, look, maybe it's something that I haven't considered before, but there's so many opportunities there. We have more free time now that COVID's, basically thrown a spanner in 2020. So a lot more people are sitting at home with a bit more time up their sleeves, or, their work schedules changed a bit. So why should they now be looking at upskilling, and why is software developer pathway one of those things that they should look at? So let's start off, mate. Just tell us a bit about yourself and sort of where you've come from and how you've come into the position you're in now.
Yeah, right. It's been a bit of a weird journey. So I started out wanting to be a geologist, studied geophysics at uni, and then a year before I graduated, the mining boom ended, all the jobs disappeared. Kind of took a bit of extra time to finish up the degree. Nothing really worked out, uh, and I kind of didn't know where to go from there. But I figured like programming and computer science was growing. There were lots of jobs in that. I couldn't possibly go wrong. So I finished up the first degree and then jumped it straight back into a second one. Through that time, sort of worked as a stagehand, unloading trucks basically for 6 years. Um, Joined the Army Reserve as an officer cadet, and that's how I managed to find With You With Me.
Awesome, man. And how you've been here for? If I get this wrong, I'll feel like an absolute dick now. About 3 months now, right?
2 months.
Oh, I was close. How have you found it so far?
It's been really good, actually. I got lucky that I started the week the lockdown started.
Yeah.
Uh, so I haven't been going too stir crazy with nothing to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been good. It's been a really welcoming community. It's good to finally put some of the stuff that I've spent years learning to some level of practice.
Yeah.
And it's just been good to be challenged.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's probably the first thing, mate. You've stepped right into what is our newest pathway here. The newest type of technology and career pathway where training veterans in, and you're sort of come in as we're still building it, which is really exciting. But on a day-to-day with you, with me, mate, do you want to talk us through what you're sort of doing and how you're building out the career pathway?
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, I'm working on like a basics of Python course, basically trying to build sort of the similar experience you get from a single semester university subject, covering all the basics of Python, a little bit of computer science, but mostly focusing on good practices for software development. Um, a lot of the problem I found going through my degree was the university is this particular university at least, is very academic, research focused.
Mm.
So a lot of the stuff we covered, even in junior subjects, was uh, very abstract. Um, High level computer science and high level mathematics stuff, which is really good if you want to go into that sort of thing, and really good if you want to push the bounds of research. But a lot of it was they weren't turning out very good developers. And during my time at the uni, they've restructured the course twice to focus more on development skills, the kind of behaviors you need to work in a team with other people doing coding. Um, so the idea is to build a course that echoes more of the actual software development skills and less of the highbrow computer science stuff that most people aren't going to need.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not everyone winds up doing high level machine learning, right off the bat. you have
Yeah.
plenty of time to learn those skills. You don't need it as an introduction to learning how to code.
Yeah. Absolutely. And look, we've seen that across a number of the other pathways that are a bit more mature with you, with me, cybersecurity being essentially the staple. Um, a lot of people wouldn't be considered when they're applying for jobs before we built out the pathway. People were applying for jobs but couldn't get across the line because they didn't have a master's of cyber. But to be an operator or a tier 1, tier 2 analyst, you didn't need that master's or even, to a large extent, an undergrad degree to actually be an operator and do on the job tasks. As you said, it's really about those basic skills, and then the rest you can learn on the job, right?
Yeah, 100%. I
Yeah.
mean, the only real skills you need to start learning on the job is know how to ask questions of Google and know how to understand the answers. The rest of coding is practice.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is a lot of this, a lot of information is open source now. So if you can't figure out I guess if you don't have the memory of what you might have regurgitated in, university, data dumped it, then you might have forgotten how to do it. You can always go back onto Google and have that sort of refresher, or YouTube, and someone's probably put up a blog post or some sort of video that will refresh your memory, and you'll be like, all right, sweet, I remember how to do that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Look, what actually interested you in becoming a software developer, and joining this pathway yourself? What was it from? Did you see the opportunities in solving problems? Was it a matter of seeing, the end state of making, a decent amount of money? Was there anything in particular that really tickled your fancy along the way?
It was nothing particularly highbrow. It was purely born out of frustration, to be honest. Going through the geology degree, like we were taught how to read seismic graphs printed out on paper, and like
So
it's stacks of
like
paper.
the earthquake things, right?
Yeah, and like magnetic readings of cores as they're drilled down.
Yeah.
Only it's like 6-inch thick stacks of paper, and it was absolutely ridiculous. And while there was a couple of tools we used for some of the geographical information stuff, a lot of the tools were very bare bones. What the software like offered was pretty minimal, and a lot of the advice was, "Oh, just go and build your own tools." And speaking to all the postgrad students and the tutors and things, they were like, "Yeah, I can do all this stuff with GIS, but I did all of it myself. It's all spaghetti code. I don't really know how it works half the time." There weren't tools available for them to easily use. Everyone was building their own stuff. Whereas like computer science, you can't like go to a tech show these days without bumping into 6 people all making a different app for the same thing. Like there's more tools than you will ever need to use. So there's plenty of options there. But even though the earth sciences had a lot of potential to use those tools, they just weren't being built, at least at the time I was studying. So that kind of frustration led me into wanting to be able to do that stuff myself and hopefully find a niche. And then, I discovered there was actually lots of job potential in computer science, and then it helped that I enjoyed it. So
Yeah, so that's really interesting. The Army came out with a program a while ago. I don't know if it's still running, but it was called DiggerWorks. Have you heard of that before?
yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, so essentially it's, hey, I'm an operator, I'm a member of the Australian Army, and I am frustrated that something's not working. I can see, like, to me, it's obvious of how to resolve that issue. So I'm going to write into this program called DiggerWorks. It goes into, I believe it was DSTG. And then, basically, if the idea was good enough, the Army was willing to back those people into making those projects and solving the problem. So it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, your transition and your interest in software development came out of essentially that similar process of, you can see something that needs to be done better. You've got that creativity and openness, but you sort of blocked at that stage and you thought, bugger it, why can't I just fix it myself? And you just did it, right?
Yeah, 100%. I could see there was a problem, and I knew I didn't have the tools and the knowledge to fix the problems, so I figured I'd go find them.
Yeah, and do you think that's part of the interest of other developers that you've spoken to, or other potentially even trainees that you might have spoken to about, hey, look, It is just, it's interesting to solve new problems and be creative and open up that flair that, you know, when most people think of creativity, they start thinking about being an artist or, you know, a singer, songwriter, whatever it might be. They don't think about these sort of really useful utilities and tools that they can do and solve larger complex problems. Do you think there's something in that that, you know, someone sitting and listening to this might say, actually, you know what, I do come up with a lot of these good ideas, whether it might be the next big dating app or something similar, that they might say, you know what, maybe I'll just go ahead and learn how to build it and then do it myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, heaps of people have gone through the courses at uni with. They've basically like come across some problem, or they've been exposed to something like a game or something they enjoy, and they've gone, there's more potential here that hasn't been realized. They've gone and make their own tools and things. And a lot of hiring practices around software dev kind of look for that, the kind of people who will be self-driven to make tools to do things completely without, you know, prompting.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds to me like the industry is starting to realize that there's more job positions available than there are people with those bachelors of computer science and mathematics, that they're starting to look at other ways that they can find the people that can do the job, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like, you don't need the degree, you just need to know how to do things. And with everything being so open source and so freely available, and so many communities out there, it's very easy to go out and find that information and teach yourself. Like the structure of a uni course will help, and sometimes a uni course will teach some subjects better than you could learn them on your own, but you don't need it.
That's really cool, man. That's really cool. Let's talk about our course for a sec as well, especially when we're talking about the skills that people are going to learn. What are some of the main, and you know, I'm not technical in any way, so I know Python, I know of C++, C hash, and you know all these other languages that I've heard of, but I know nothing about. What is important to learn? What are some things that, you know, I guess, especially if we're looking at people that don't have the experience before, to learn the basics to get their foot in the door and learn? What are the real key things that they need to learn throughout that journey to get their foot in the door?
Um, I guess the basics would be learning all your basic data types, learning how Boolean logic operates, learning how to do your functions and methods and classes. Um, Depending on your language, uh, because some languages are object oriented, some objects are not. The most popular ones like Python, object oriented languages, if you can get your head around what that involves, you're 90% of the way there. Um, the rest of it is just filling out your basic knowledge. Like learning a computer programming language has been a lot like learning a real language. Uh, a lot of the rules are kind of the same between like Python, Java, C. You know, like an array is not going to change too much in how it's implemented. But what changes between languages is the syntax and how stuff is arranged. So if you can learn the underlying concepts, like what a string is, if you can learn how to pass instructions from object to object, then learning how to do that in different languages is going to be a lot easier than learning it the first time.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I actually know a bunch of diggers, and you know, probably myself included, to some extent, that fall into this category of learning bits of new languages like Spanish or French, especially when I'm traveling overseas. You know, learning that language for the reason of, you know, potentially finding someone on Tinder and being able to, you know, talk to them on there, or, you know, picking up or something like that, right? Like some sort of fun reason to pick up a new skill. The cool thing about this is you're learning a language to potentially then future-proof yourself, because, you know, I actually brought up an interesting stat here about the shortage of people in these, that, you know, that have these skills. And here's one that says the estimate is by 2021 there's going to be a shortage worldwide of about 1.4 million software developers and only 400,000 graduates from university. So between 2018 to 28, so a 10-year period, they're expecting about a 21% growth of these jobs year on year, which is absolutely phenomenal. So these, people sort of like myself that might have learnt languages for a bit of fun for a reason or another, why don't we start looking at learning, a programming language, as you said, even if it's one, start there and learn others from the basics, to then learn it in a way that they can apply it to their career as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why Python's a pretty good place to start. I have heard it jokingly referred to as programming in plain English, just because there's a lot of fiddly syntax rules that would apply to C that don't apply to Python. Other languages can be a lot less forgiving when you make a mistake. Python's pretty friendly, offers a lot of tools, holds your hand for a little bit. So it's a very good program to learn how to code, learn the basics and stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. What's the well, let's talk a day to day. What does a day in the life of a entry level software developer, because I think that's a good place to start. Entry level software developer, once they've potentially completed a short course online, learn the basic skills, and they get one of the entry level jobs, what are they going to do day to day?
Day to day is a lot of reading and a lot of researching, but primary task is really maintaining code that's already been written. So when new bugs appear, finding them, running lots of tests and unit tests to make sure new code works and old code still works with the new code. Whenever there's new demands from like other departments or customers and things, there's a lot of figuring out how to implement that before writing code. It is like there's a lot of research and design and development outside of simply bashing away at a keyboard. But generally, like maintenance and keeping everything ticking along is the main task.
Yeah, right. That's interesting. So it sounds like someone who, like, people who would be really, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Really suitable to this type of role are generally going to be people who are creative thinkers, outside the box, like solving complex problems, and those people that see something that needs to be fixed and be able to say, hey, this is what I know needs to be done. I will follow these step-by-step processes to get it done. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, 100%. Like, being able to creatively solve problems is a pretty important skill.
Yeah.
Like, there's plenty of ways to like brute force solve a problem, but that's not always going to be the most efficient. At some point, hardware requirements are going to matter again when people are coding. So you need to be smart about how you implement things. And yeah.
Yeah. You might necessarily be able to just force it. You might have to think about a new way to fix it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
Interesting. All right. This is a question that I've gotten a fair bit so far. Once again, I don't come from a technical background, so I'd like to pick your brains on how hard is it to learn these new skills? Like, if I've used a computer to jump on PM keys, the DRN, I've played Xbox before, like I've done bits and pieces. I know how to open Word, I can use Excel, but I've not done anything after that. How much of a learning curve is it going to be for me to be able to jump in and say, hey, look, I'm going to learn from the basics ground up? How much time might it take, or, how difficult might it be for me?
It depends, I guess, how quickly you pick new things up and how curious you are. But it's not that difficult, to be honest. That's where a lot of people start. Like, my first few coding projects weren't really like code. It was just a few text scripts for some really minor modifications for games, for example. Actually picking up the basic concepts that you would need to even like build your own website is not particularly complicated. It's fairly easy to learn.
Interesting. All right. Another interesting thing is, where, if I do go through this pathway, where am I going to end up? What are the types of companies? What types of problems am I going to be solving? So understand that, the first job is probably going to be quite basic. as you said, sort of fixing bugs here and there. What are some of the companies though that might be interested in employing these types of people? Are we talking those Googles, Apples, Microsofts, those types of companies? What's your thought there?
How long is a piece of string? Like pretty much every company, anything with a web-based presence needs web developers, and a lot of the back end of web stuff these days is getting done in Python. Machine learning and artificial intelligence, even though they're marketing buzzwords a lot of the time, there's still a huge amount of money and research going into them. A lot of companies are trying to implement smarter techniques to get stuff done using machine learning. There's always going to be jobs for the big FANG companies: Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, Microsoft, etc. There's also going to be tons of jobs in finance. Like at my uni, a lot of the sort of outside marketing and money was coming from the big four financial companies. So it really depends. And then at the other end of the spectrum, there's also your small startups, companies who have got one good product or app idea they really want to work on and they're looking for talent. Companies building websites, like anything.
Yeah. It's actually, it's interesting. I've done a bit more research on this as well. And, a lot of those bigger companies that we just spoke about, the Microsofts, Apples, Amazon, Facebooks, they're American based, whereas Australia, you look at the top 20, the ASX top 20, and a lot of them are sort of dinosaur companies. I've noticed a lot of them are starting to, as you said, they're starting to put more money into research and development and digitizing, preparing for the future of work. So, I can only see this not only for those obvious types of companies and those startup new companies that need developers. I honestly do see that potentially over time we're going to see more of those larger giants in Australia move to digitize their workforce and prepare people for what is inevitably going to be catching up to the rest of the world. So yeah, to me, mate, it actually sounds pretty cool. And another interesting one I saw is in Australia there's probably double the vacancies and there are people that can fill them at the moment. So yeah, it's a really interesting one, mate. I don't have too many more questions for you other than, I guess to wrap up, what would be your advice to someone who might be sitting there with a bit more time up their sleeves now? They might be thinking about discharging from the military. They might already be out looking for something. They just haven't found their purpose. They, let's say they love solving problems. They're creative, outside the box thinkers. What's your advice to them to get started? What can they do right now today to get started on this pathway?
Probably pick a project, something that interests you, and then go about learning how to implement it. Like if you want to build a website just for vanity's sake, stick to that goal, go and figure out what you need to learn all of those tools, learn what is available for you, and then work your way up from there. Like once you've got one project, you're likely going to think of another project you want to work on and just keep pushing the bounds of what you know, keep trying to learn new things. That's really the best way to go about getting your foot in the door and being a good programmer.
Awesome, man. Look, very much appreciate your time. Thank you for your insights. Really pleasure talking to you about software development. I think it's a really cool pathway. Once again, we do have live courses on With You With Me, and we are continuing to build them out. So thanks, Tom, for your time. If you do have any questions as well, anyone that is listening on, my email address is really simple. It's just will@withyouwithme.com. Tom, I think yours is tom.alderton@withyouwithme.com as well.
Yep.
Perfect. So if you have any questions, you're listening along and you think maybe this is for me, but I don't know, reach out to us, reach out to the Veteran Success team. You can book a call with any of us to talk about what career pathway is most suitable to you based on, our methodology is discover, train, deploy, grow. The first part is discovering what jobs are out there, what career types are out there, and what's suitable to you. So make the jump, make the leap, test yourself, figure out what you want to do, have the conversation with us. you know, you never know what's going to happen. And if you are interested in it, free courses for you. Why not? But yeah, thank you very much for your time, Tom. I appreciate it.
Thank you. No worries. You're welcome.
Have a good one.
You too. Have a good one.